Thank you for coming to Leaders Like Us. I am Lindsay Juergens, and today I have the honor of sitting with the president, the general manager of Chief Construction. This is Roger Bullington. Roger, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to just talk with you this morning.
Yeah, and I also just want to acknowledge that Pinnacle Bank allows us to come in and film in their beautiful facility, so we very much appreciate that.
We appreciate Pinnacle Bank. They've been a great customer of Chief Construction. We did the remodel on this building, and it just turned out absolutely wonderful. It's a beautiful building.
It is. So they're kind enough to let us do this here, and so again, I just very much appreciate that. Roger, you have a wonderful reputation locally. We know you care about this community. And I, as a Grand Island resident for the last 15-ish years, I've seen the rockin' and rollin' you do around here. But I would like to learn a little bit more about your history. And so if you could just talk about that. You're from the Columbus area, is that correct?
Correct. Columbus High. Went to UNL, got my Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering. Went and moved to St. Joe, Missouri for 3 years. Been in Grand Island since 1986, working for Chief as a civil structural engineer. Started out there in the buildings division. I spent 25 years there, and then I started up the Chief Development arm, and then a year after that, had a retirement at Chief Construction. I took over Chief Construction in 2012. So yeah, it's been an exciting journey at Chief. I got my 35-year service award plaque this year, as of this month, so excited to have a long career with Chief, which is a wonderful company.
Absolutely. You've done a lot of different things. You've seen a lot of different things, and you were talking about a little bit before we started shooting, you were talking about kind of how you organize, or you kind of put it like you have a disorganized desk when you first glance at it, and you've got 25,000 post-it notes, but you know what they mean and you know where everything is. So whenever we're thinking about that path within Chief and the way that maybe you think compared to some of your other coworkers, do you feel like the way that you organize and the way that you function within Chief has lent itself to your rise, or do you feel like you're a little atypical? Like, kind of, what do you think about that?
A little bit of both. I can multitask, and I've got a really good memory, and so I can compartmentalize that stuff. But it just seems like getting organized is always tough for me because I have so much stuff, whether or not it's building plans for this, or imagery for this land deal, or trying to take care of a customer on a construction project, or updating either processes or marketing or things like that. There's just a lot of stuff going on. And so I think that's helped me, because I like to think I could do a large volume at work. And I learned that from a lot of people at Chief Buildings. There's a lot of task-oriented people that are unbelievable. Just the best in their industries type of stuff. And I think that helped me. Everybody's got to kind of go down their path of keeping organization and how they get stuff done. I think for myself, it's been what's helped me is perseverance. I'll work as many hours as it takes to get something done, or to make a commitment to the customer. That's always been important to me.
This is a series it's called Leaders Like Us. We're talking a little bit about leadership, a little bit about you, all of how it blends together. So I'm kind of curious, how do you like to lead others and mentor others? I asked you a question in a Leadership Tomorrow meeting, I guess that was maybe six-ish months ago now, and I asked, are you mentoring anyone? Because I think about the void that will be there whenever you decide to retire. What do you think about leading, mentoring? What does that look like for you and then those who work for you?
The one thing that in the industry that I'm in, you got to have good technical and good construction expertise, or some type of background to build on. And so that the person has to kind of have on themselves. So hopefully I can lead by example, that when I'm at my desk, I'm on task. I'm working, I'm thinking about this. I'm trying to plan my social and networking and relationship building schedule, out a while. That's kind of what I try and convey to the others, is it's important to network, build relationships with potential clients, other business leaders and stuff like that. And a lot of that stuff is done through community involvement, social activities, and networking opportunities.
Do you ever have someone come to you within Chief and say, hey, Roger, how do you do it all? Like, can you show us what you're doing? We want to be the future Roger Bullington. Has anyone ever approached you with that kind of concept?
Indirectly so. You know, I think one thing, you know, at Chief, my longevity there has helped a lot. You know, the fact that I've got my engineering degree and my MBA and things like that. You got to build a good foundation, base foundation. That'd be the first thing, or anything recommended for anybody to try and advance. You've got to be good at what you're doing in your current job. I've had a lot of people say, you know, if you just promote me to this job, I could do better. And it's like, well, they're underperforming what they're doing now. First, you exceed at what you're going to do now, then opportunities will open up. The other thing about that is most every job I got at Chief wasn't ever opened up. I told the person, you know, a year, 2 years, 3 years before that I'd like to do that. And it just kind of naturally evolved in there.
Right.
That I worked my way into it. So I think that's another thing, is taking the initiative for these young career-minded individuals who want to move on with their career.
What would you say is one of the top reasons you might say to someone that they should invest in Grand Island?
I think there's a lot of opportunity here.
Okay.
Grand Island, we need to be the gem of the prairie. We need to regain the deal of it being called the third city in Nebraska. We have to grow to do that. And we've got to start acting like a big city. And Dave Taylor always kind of says that. He's with the Grand Island Area Economic Development Corp, and he kind of coined that frame. You know, we've got to act like a big city, and we really need to. We're on the cusp of, you know, of a lot of opportunities and jobs, retail, things like that we need to take the next step. We've got to be a leader in communities in outstate Nebraska, not just be reactive. Norfolk is doing a lot of good things, and everybody's kind of emulating their floor plan on what they're trying to do. And if you'd go up there and tour that city, the type of construction projects, the type of programs, the YMCAs, everything they have there is just top notch. And so we're kind of being reactive. We should have been proactive on a lot of that stuff as a community.
Sure.
So I'd like to see the leaders of Grand Island being more proactive and make some more things happen. Some of it are some pretty big scale projects, but we've been kind of not reinvesting in the community for a long time. And it's time that we're going to have to take that big step. And it's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take a lot of money and a lot of sacrifice.
Sure.
But I think the community would be much better off if we could get some of that stuff going.
What's some of that stuff? What would be, give me a couple of things that you would like to see that maybe aren't necessarily on deck yet, but what are a couple of things you would like to see here?
Continued development down on the South Highway 281 corridor. We've got to get to that pipeline, and bringing that money off the interstate would be good. We got to help the developer continue on the Grand Island Veterans Home. It's called the Liberty Campus now. See that going. We got to see the repurposing of Conestoga Mall. That's going to soon become a zombie mall. And unfortunately, the out-of-state owners there are satisfied with letting that degrade. That used to be the pillar of the retail star of Grand Island, and it's very, very disappointing. And so that needs to become under local ownership and get that back to become the retail hub that we are. We've been at $1 billion worth of retail sales for the last couple of years, and we need to grow that. And from what I hear, we're talking to a lot of retail brokers and that. There's ones that want to come here, but some developments have to happen. You know, Prairie Commons is a great example. That would be prime for new commercial development there. The healthcare component out there has been very strong with the hospital and the medical office building, and now with Tabitha kicking off their groundbreaking the end of this month on a $45 million senior living facility. So Prairie Commons, I'd like to see that continue on the growth path. So that when you come in to the doorstep of Grand Island, you're thinking, boy, that looks more like West Omaha versus
Sure.
a non-distinct outstate Nebraska community with not any planned development areas. And
Right.
I think that was what the vision of Prairie Commons was, with all the hike and bike trails that are planned there, the water features, and the roundabouts and the higher end landscaping and things like that.
If we build it, will they come? How do we staff with the issues that we face? I know chief construction, chief in general has had staffing issues. Everyone I know has had staffing issues. What's your hot tip? Do you have any ideas?
You know, one of the first things we got to look at is we got to address the housing shortage. You know, I think last year there was 184 housing units built, and that's in apartments and homes. The year before that was like 90. Year before that was like 80. Year before that was like 190. You know, that's not, for a town this size, it's not even close to the needs. Me and another guy were kind of just adding up the number of open jobs in the community. You know, I bet Chief has over 100. Hornady probably has over 100. Case New Holland has probably over 100. The hospital needs another Grand Island Regional Medical Center. The next year we'll have 100. With the casino coming in, they're saying 380. That could happen in the next 2-3 years. You just add up a few of those, there's going to be 1,000 new jobs that are either open right now or will be very soon. Where's the housing going to come from? So there's a lot of federal programs and everything to hit that lower end housing segment. But where is the middle housing in Grand Island? What's the next development for that higher end housing? And Grand Island's always been underserved, healthcare wise, for the size of our community.
Definitely.
And now that we got the second hospital, more competition. Look at what that spurred with CHI's investment in the cancer center, new surgical suites. The competition is good.
Yeah.
And so healthcare wise,
Yep.
we're going to have a lot of influx in healthcare professionals, which is going to get them type of nurses and the healthcare professionals. You're going to need to have a little higher set of housing, higher end apartments with amenities rich features. Same way with a little higher end middle housing units. So I'm all for doing the housing on the lower end, but we're totally forgetting about that middle and higher end housing to attract young professionals. And I think that's where this community needs to set forth some type of agenda or goal or game plan to help facilitate that growth. Developing in anything outstate, even Lincoln or Omaha, it's very, very important. So if the developers don't have the tools like tax increment financing, like the Rural Workforce Housing Fund, low-income housing tax credits and that stuff, it won't get built. You can't do that and do stuff at market rates. And so I think that the community needs to realize that to grow, you need those to help the developers and the real estate professionals and the investors to get a return. Money is very fluid. It's going to go to either North Platte, Norfolk, Lincoln, or Omaha investment in real estate or businesses or that sort. And we at Grand Island have to have something to showcase so that we can attract it. And having those type of incentives is one way that I believe we can attract money. There's a lot of money out there. If you can just give it a fair return, we could do some pretty big things in Grand Island as far as not only programs, but on big construction projects, and kind of growing this to become, quality growth, not just growth. We can go out and get minimum wage jobs. Every community can do that, but we got to look at that little higher sector in which get the healthcare, the young professionals, things like that. Then the other ones will fill in. But if you don't have that higher base and that higher household income, medium household income, then that's not going to drive the positions down below.
Roger, if you had, thinking about what you just talked about, which was incredibly poignant, if you had a direct line of communication to every member in the Grand Island community, you had their full attention, and you could deliver a message, what would that message be?
I think to get together and solve some of the issues. The opportunities in Grand Island are pretty huge. That casino opportunity would be huge, but do it right. Make sure it's not just slot machines, you know, to hit one sector, the demographic. Let's go a little higher end, do a higher end build on that hotel. We've got to utilize and leverage the shooting park, the state fair grounds and out at Fauna and all that Fauna grounds. We have 600,000 square feet out there. We got the Heartland Event Center out there. A lot of stuff is being underutilized. And so I think if we get together and put some of these projects together to try and tie some of those things in, and so we can showcase to the state and even out of state how we could bring in these shows and utilizing the facilities at the state fair. And then, by the way, also you have a casino attached. And you got the Heartland Event Center for concerts, and you got the shooting park, and you've got all these other amenities, these cool amenities, the shopping that Grand Island has to offer. And so we just got to tie it together, not be reactive. We need to be proactive. Our YMCA has been depreciating for years. I think that needs to have a big influx with that, in addition to a community center. Everybody's building these big, you know, I call them indoor practice fields. Everybody else calls them field houses, whether it's Norfolk, Hastings planted one, Kearney's looking at one. Everybody's looking at them. Well, we've got to do one here in this town. That drives the kids and the young parents here for all the sporting events. Club sports are so big, you know, and so we need to leverage all that. And Grand Island has the other amenities that the other communities don't have. We got horse racing. We'll have soon to have the communities and that sort. So that's way, if we leverage this stuff with the other sports and amenities, I think it'll be a winner for Grand Island.
I think it will too. So if you could just wrap that up and like take care of all that for us, that would be super nice of you.
Yeah, not a problem.
Roger, thank you again so very much for coming and joining me today to have this conversation. You know, I've been a fan of yours for some time. I know everyone that I told that I'd be meeting with you today was like, oh my gosh, that's great. So we know what an asset you are to Grand Island, and I personally appreciate it for my family. I have a fairly young family still. And, you know, I think about wanting to keep them here. And I would love it if, you know, if they go to school somewhere else, fine. But I would love for them to come back and be productive in this community. I've grown to love being here. And I'm very passionate about it. So with that said, I appreciate anyone who's willing to say, let's keep moving the dial forward, keep pushing the boundaries, question ourselves. So thank you. Thank you for all the work that you do. It means a lot.
Thank you, and thanks for Leadership Tomorrow. I was in class of number 7, which was like 92, I believe.
Yeah?
Something like that. So I think it's a great program. My son was in Youth Leadership Tomorrow. It's a great program. So if everybody can continue to support and progressing that on, it does help develop young leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming to Leaders Like Us. Again, this is Roger Bullington, and that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Yes.